All right, so in past videos, we have talked about how to build these drawers and how to install undermount drawer glides, but we have not talked about how to build the cabinet yet. So that is what this video is going to be about. We're going to build the actual structure of the cabinet. But before we get started into the actual build, let's talk about why I set it up the way I set it up. All right, so the first thing I decided on is I wanted it to be flush or pretty close to flush with the table saw. When I was working, I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room when I'm working at the table saw, not to interfere or bang my knee against the cabinet while I was working. Now, that created a problem with this top bank of drawers that if you were to pull out the drawer, I'd have to get really long overextension glides or just have half of the drawer covered up. So I decided to go with shelves on the top and then drawers on the bottom. And this has worked out really well. I have my dado blades right here at hand, so when I'm working, I don't have to open a drawer to get them. It's one of the most used things I have at the table saw, so I can just quickly grab the case, pull it out, and bring it up to where I'm working. Now, I've seen a lot of guys use things like Kaizen foam or route out into a board the exact shape of each one of these and have it in the drawer, which of course looks nice and helps keep it super organized. But one thing I have learned over the years is that tools change, tools wear out, and the next manufacturer I buy may not be this exact shape, so I'd have to remake the drawer inserts. So I think that exact custom things are kind of a bad idea if you are going to be in your shop a lot, using your tools a lot to where they eventually will wear out and you will need to replace them. So even if you buy the exact same one that you bought today, there's a good chance that the tool manufacturer has made some improvements or changes or unimprovements, which happens sometimes to save on cost. So keeping the case that it came in, most likely the next one will come in a case just like this. They pretty much all do. So this way I can just have my blades, my cutters, and all my shims along with my chart right here at hand, right here ready to go. I don't have to keep it going back and forth to the drawer. All right, so another consideration I made was making sure that I had enough room between the side of the cabinet and my blade adjustment so I did not bang my funny bone against this side of the cabinet. I also wanted to make sure I could still put my fence away when needed be. And I didn't want to waste any kind of space down here for dust and crap to get underneath there, so I just created the cabinet in this L shape for a drawer down here. So each drawer more or less has a specific purpose. This drawer has my tinning jig in it, and there's some room for some other smaller jigs in there. This drawer has all the different blades I'm going to use. I will have a video coming out soon about these guys. All right, and then this top drawer has everything I need to make jigs. As a custom furniture maker, I rarely make the same thing twice, so I wanted to make sure I had all this stuff handy right here at the table saw ready to go. And I have not finished outfitting this compartment. In a future video, I will make some trays and show you how I do that and how I went about organizing that kind of stuff. And then one thing that I hate about drawers is that drawers that don't have a purpose often get just crap crammed in them. And so I generally prefer shelves. So I set this guy up to have adjustable shelves in it. I haven't built the shelves there because I'm not sure if I want to put a table saw sled in there or just use it for some additional jig storage. Depending on the size of the jigs, I can adjust the shelves. All right, so that is the basics of the cabinet. Let's get into the build. All right, cabinets are generally made out of plywood, but the price of plywood is nuts right now, so I'm gonna use solid wood. And let's be honest, I'm getting old and lazy, and hefting around a full 3/4 inch sheet of plywood just sucks. So that's really the real reason why I'm using solid wood. So let's get started. All right, so I have all my parts for my panels milled up and I got the first ones laid out and I'm gonna glue them together here. And I'm just gonna use some floating tenons just to help with alignment. All right, so I decided to dress up the cabinet a little bit with some walnut edge banding. So I cut some 3/8 inch strips and I'm just gluing them onto the face of each panel. And then when I clamp it up, I'm going to use a caul to help distribute clamping pressure on that thin little piece. All right, when I installed this edge banding, I left it a little proud on both sides. So it's just a little bit wider than the actual workpiece. So that way I didn't have to worry about making sure it lined up perfectly exactly on both sides all the way down. Gave me a little bit margin of error. So now I need to get rid of that. So to do that, I have a flush trim bit in the router table and I've set my fence up so it's even with the bearing. And then I'm just going to use the fence as support. And between the fence and the bearing, I should get a nice flush clean cut on both sides as I do this. All right, there we go. Nice flush edge, worked out pretty good. All right, next we're gonna build these web frames. These web frames basically is a front, a back, and then you can't see it because I already installed the drawer glides here, but there's two sides here. And what this does is a couple of things. It helps make the cabinet more rigid, so it prevents it from racking back and forth. Gives a really easy place to line up your drawer glides, but most importantly, when you shut the drawer in a shop with a lot of sawdust, it gives it something tight to close against. So this little crack here, no sawdust or anything floats in there, closes tight, keeps that stuff dust free. So I already got some material milled up, so let's get to the table saw and cut this stuff to length. All right, I've squared up one end on all my parts, so this end's nice and square, and then it's time to cut it to length, so I've marked my length, and I'm going to set up a stop block here, so that way, no matter what, all my parts will be exactly the same length and help increase my chances of making sure everything is square. Also make it go a little bit faster without having to measure mark each piece. Just set the first one up and all the rest will be exactly the same. All right, so the center web frames, I'm just going to do a simple tongue and groove type of joint. I have a 1/4 inch dado blade set up in here to go down the center of my rails. To make sure they're 100% centered, I'm going to run them through, flip it around, and then run it through again. That'll guarantee that the dado ends up in the center. All right, I set up a sacrificial fence onto my main fence so the blade doesn't scrape it, and I adjusted the blade and did a couple of test fits to make sure that this was a nice snug fit, and so that will make up my web frame. So now I'm just going to run my other rails through to cut a tongue on them. All right, I have my dado blade set up with a sacrificial fence to protect my main fence so I can cut the rabbets, and then I will leave the dado stack at the exact same height setting and then move the fence over to start cutting all the dados for the shelves. All right, one side is going to have adjustable shelves in it, so I have my jig set up. with a 1/2-inch collar to follow the 1/2-inch holes and a 1/4-inch plunge bit to match the shelf pins. And so I'm just going to work my way down, and then I will flip it over, making sure that I keep this front side aligned with this front side to guarantee that they'll be perfectly parallel. And I'll do that on the other piece, and then we'll have adjustable shelves. All right, so it's time to do a little assembly on the cabinet. So I have these little I-beams I made a while ago, and that's going to help space it up off the workbench so I can slide a clamp underneath the bottom and to the top to clamp it down. So just to give me a little elevation here. Right, and since there's so many small little pieces and parts to this thing and it all needs to go together all at once, I'm going to use slow set epoxy to give me some extra time to glue it all together. All right, for these dados on the lower frame, since this is not solid wood and this is solid wood, I'm only going to glue the front, and then the back will float. Okay, so I'm going to put a toe kick on this cabinet, or I'm going to put the toe kick on the floor and then attach the cabinet to it, I should say. So I'm not going to do any kind of special joinery for this. It's just a basic cabinet toe kick. So I'm just going to use a little bit of glue and brad nails and butt joints. Keep it simple. All right, so I went over to the table saw and mitered these ends for the support bracket, and then I ripped it down the thickness of this guy so that way I can glue and brad nail it in place, and then I'll glue and brad nail this guy down in place here. So that way when I set the cabinet on top, I have something to attach to, so I don't have to try to find this little tiny edge. I have a good clean spot to attach to, and this will also give me lots of support to keep the frame from racking. All right, I designed the cabinet to take full advantage of the space underneath the table saw here. So I want the cabinet, or the cabinet is going to come out to about the edge of this table here. So I'm going to remove these legs and then use the cabinet itself to support this wing of the table. All right, so until I get the cabinet under here to support this into the table, I'm going to clamp this over here just as a temporary support to help support that until I get ready. All right, so the table saw has this base that sticks out here a little bit. So I made the toe kick so it would just clear that base when I set the cabinet on here. It can slide all the way up and butt up against the cabinet of the saw. All right, change of plans. Working by myself, I'm not able to lift this up on top of the toe kick while it's underneath the table. All right, so the guide rail for the fence system is a little bit lower than the rest of the table, so I couldn't slide this just underneath here like this. So I had to slide it in from the side. Yeah, I'm sure there was a better way to get that in there, but for your entertainment, I let you watch me struggle. So, yeah. All right, so just to make sure I'm even all the way across, I'm just gonna do a quick measurement. All right, so those triangle pieces we put in earlier on the toe kick, I'm going to pre-drill to screw into, and the drawers that go in here will cover up that screw head so you'll never see it. All right, so I have a straight edge here to make sure that my table is all in plane with the saw itself. And since I took the legs off from the original table, I need to shim up this side. So I cut a shim here, and there is a rib on the underside of the table that's kind of close to this guy to give it some support. So I'm going to use that as my attachment. So I'm going to slide this shim underneath here, and then I'll drive a screw up in there to attach the top of the table to the cabinet, so that way nothing shifts and this stays properly supported. All right, thanks for watching. Hopefully the next video I'll be able to get the drawer organizers built, and the video on building the drawers itself is already published. I'll put some links somewhere for that guy. So yeah, there we go.